I thought it was just a shadow between the graves, until it started running beside my car and I realized it wasn't running at all. It wasn't touching the ground. My engine died at the cemetery gate at 2:14 in the morning. By the time it came back to life, something was already standing at my passenger window. I couldn't see its face. There was nowhere a face should have been. I made it home. I locked every door. I called in sick the next morning, sat in my kitchen with every light on, and told myself it was over. That was before I opened my curtains and saw it standing across the street. So, waiting. Its arms hanging 3 inches too long. I worked the late shift at a distribution warehouse outside of Mill Haven, Indiana. It's not glamorous work. Pulling orders, scanning barcodes, standing on concrete floors for 8 hours while the fluorescent lights buzz overhead like dying insects. But it pays the bills and I was used to it. I'd worked that shift for almost 3 years. That Tuesday in October 2019, I clocked out at 1:40 a.m. The parking lot was nearly empty. The night was cold in that specific Midwestern way, not biting cold, not dramatic cold, just a deep, wet, bone-settling cold that makes you feel like the world has decided to quietly withdraw from you. My breath came out in white clouds. The sky was overcast. No stars. No moon. Just a flat, gray-black ceiling pressing down over the cornfields. I had 2 routes home. The main one, Route 9, was about 22 minutes past the gas station, the diner that's only open until noon, and the grain elevator with the broken weather vane. That was the safe route. The well-lit route. The route every sensible person takes. The other route was Harlow Road. Harlow Road cuts back through what locals call the old quarter of the county. It's a 2-lane blacktop that runs about 6 miles through forest and farmland before it reconnects with the county road closer to my neighborhood. On a good night, it saves maybe 4 minutes. 4 minutes. I want you to understand how small a reason that was for what followed. I'd driven Harlow Road dozens of times in daylight. It's the kind of road that's beautiful in summer. The trees arch over it like a cathedral, leaves filtering gold light in June and July. But in October, those same trees are bare. They reach over the road like fingers. And there's one stretch, maybe half a mile long, where the road runs directly alongside the cemetery. Harlow Township Cemetery. EST 1847 according to the limestone gate post. The oldest section has graves that go back to the Civil War. The stones are weathered down to near illegible smears of carved letters. Some of them have sunk so deeply into the earth that only a few inches of stone still show above the grass. The iron fence that runs its perimeter has been repaired and replaced in sections so many times that it looks like a mismatched quilt of different eras of ironwork, Victorian curls next to plain welded pipe from the 1970s. I'd never thought much about that cemetery. It was just a feature of the landscape. Just a place. I know better now. I got into my car, turned the heat on, and pulled out of the parking lot. I told myself I'd take Harlow Road because it was late and there'd be no traffic and 4 minutes was 4 minutes. I was tired. My back hurt. I wanted to be home. I turned left instead of right at the County Road junction, and I started down Harlow Road at 1:53 a.m. For the first 3 miles, nothing happened. Radio was on low, some late-night talk program, 2 hosts arguing about something I wasn't really listening to. The headlights carved a tunnel of pale yellow light through the dark. Trees pressed in on both sides, the bare branches overlapping above me. An opossum skittered across the road ahead of my headlights. I watched it disappear into the ditch. I noticed the cemetery before I reached it. There's a slight depression in the road, almost like the land itself sighs at that spot, and then the tree line opens up on the left side and the iron fence begins. The old limestone gateposts appear first, and then the graveyard unfolds, rows of pale stones in the dark, uneven as broken teeth. I slowed slightly out of habit. The road is narrow there and the shoulder drops off steeply. That's when I first saw it, or thought I saw it. Movement between the stones. At first I told myself it was an animal. A deer maybe. Deer move through cemeteries at night all the time in rural Indiana. They graze on the grass between the stones with a kind of serene indifference to the dead sleeping beneath them. But this didn't move like a deer. It moved in a way I couldn't immediately classify. My headlights caught it at the edge of their reach, just a shape, tall and dark, at the far end of the cemetery where the oldest stones cluster near the back fence. It was there for a half second and then it wasn't. Gone behind a row of graves. I kept driving. My hands tightened on the wheels slightly, that reflex tightening of grip that your body does when your brain starts processing something uncomfortable before your conscious mind catches up. I watched the cemetery on my left. Nothing. Just stones. Just the iron fence sliding past in my peripheral vision. Then I saw it again. Closer this time. And moving differently than before. It wasn't walking between the graves. It was pacing, keeping up with my car from inside the fence line, moving parallel to the road, through the rows of headstones. It was tall. Taller than a person. Its movement was wrong in a way I struggled to name. There was an extra hitch in it, a pause at the wrong moment, like something that had learned to move by watching from a distance and hadn't quite gotten the weight distribution right. I sped up. The thing kept pace. I want to tell you I was calm. I want to tell you I was rational. I was neither. My heart was pressing up into my throat in a way I'd never experienced before. Not the quick flutter of a jump scare, but something deeper. Older. That animal part of your brain firing signals so primitive they don't even come with words. Just the raw, electric screaming of wrong, 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 wrong. My headlights swept left as the road curved slightly, and for one full second I saw it clearly. It was standing among the graves. Not moving. Not running. Just standing there between two tall Victorian obelisks, completely still, watching me. It was very tall, 6.5 feet, maybe 7, and it was thin in a way that human beings are not thin. Not emaciated, not skeletal. Just constructed differently. Its proportions were slightly, undeniably, horribly off. Its shoulders were too narrow. Its limbs were too long. It was standing with its arms hanging at its sides, and those arms descended past where they should have ended. Then my headlights passed it, and in my rearview mirror there was nothing there. Just graves. Just stones. I drove. I told myself it was a scarecrow. Someone had put a scarecrow in the cemetery, which made no sense, which I knew made no sense. But the alternative was something my mind was not yet willing to hold. I was approaching the cemetery gate. The main entrance, 2 tall limestone posts with a wrought iron archway between them, and a heavy gate that the county left unlocked until sunset and supposedly latched shut after dark. The gate was halfway through the road's view when I first noticed something wrong with it. It was moving. Swinging slowly outward on its hinges, in the dead-still air of that windless October night, swinging open as though someone on the other side had just pushed it. I was maybe 30 yards away when my car stalled. Not sputtered. Not hesitated. It simply stopped. Engine cut. Dashboard lights went dark for a half second, and then the emergency indicators came on, red and amber lights blinking in the sudden silence. The radio died. The heater fan spun down. The only sound was my own breathing, very loud, in the sudden quiet of a car that had simply ceased to function 20 yards from an open cemetery gate at 2 in the morning. I turned the key. Nothing. Turned it again. A thin click, like something mechanical swallowing dryly, and then silence. I looked through the windshield at the cemetery gate, now fully open, its iron bulk resting against the fence post, and I felt something I can only describe as a pressure change. Like the air in the car had shifted. Like the temperature had dropped 4 degrees in a single second. Something was standing at the far end of the cemetery lane, in the darkness beyond the gate, very still, and it was looking at me. I know that sounds like something you can't know for certain at distance in the dark, but I knew. The way you know when someone in a crowd has their eyes on you before you've turned to look. That base of spine certainty that something's attention has found you and is now fixed. I sat in my dead car and I watched it and it watched me, and the gate hung open between us, and I think I stopped breathing entirely for somewhere between 10 seconds and 10 years. I honestly cannot tell you which. Then it began to walk toward the road. I turned the key again. Still nothing. I was pumping the accelerator uselessly, which does nothing in a modern fuel-injected car, but which your body makes you do anyway because your body needs to be doing something, anything, while the rest of you is coming apart. It walked between the graves toward the open gate. It walked with that same wrong rhythm I'd noticed from the road. That pause that landed in the wrong beat. But now that it was closer, now that the faint ambient light from my parking lights was reaching it, I could see something else. It wasn't stepping over the graves. It was stepping through them. Through the low stones, through the old iron markers, through the earth itself. Not around them. Through them. As if the physical world in that cemetery was merely a suggestion it had chosen to partially acknowledge. I heard it before it reached the gate. A sound that came through the glass and through the steel of the door as though those barriers were paper. Not a voice. Not words. A sound like breathing, but architectural, too slow, too large, with a quality that made me think of the sound you'd hear if a house were breathing. The low, resonant rhythm of something enormous taking air in and releasing it through passages that were not shaped like a throat. It passed through the gate without touching it. Now it was on the road. Between me and whatever was behind me. Directly in front of my car, at the edge of what my parking lights could reach, and it stood there, and I saw the details I'd been spared before. The arms. The arms were the first thing. They hung wrong. Not broken, not dislocated, they just continued past where they should have stopped. The hands, I cannot tell you about the hands. I'm not going to tell you about the hands. There are things I've decided, very deliberately, not to put into words, because I believe that words make things real, and some things should be kept as unreal as possible. It moved toward me. That broken, hitching gait, covering the distance between us in a way that didn't quite correspond to how fast it was actually moving. Like watching footage that has been subtly wrongly edited. It was 20 feet away. Then it was 10. Then it was beside my car. I was making a sound. I didn't realize it until later. A low, continuous sound from somewhere behind my sternum, involuntary, the kind of sound a person makes when their body has moved beyond panic into something older and quieter and more desperate. It put something against the passenger window. I will not call it a hand. It was a part of itself that ended in a shape that pressed against the glass, and where it pressed, the glass went cold in a pattern I can't describe without my hands shaking. The window fogged from outside. Not from inside. From outside. And then I made myself look at its face. I will tell you only this, there was a face. There was something in the position where a face should be, and it had the rough geography of a face, the placement of features, the suggestion of depth. But the details of it existed in a way that bypassed my eyes and went directly to a part of my brain that I didn't know I had. I can't recall it. Every time I've tried, since that night, to remember the specific features of what I saw, I get only the response. The stomach drop. The feeling of looking at something that should not be present in the same reality as the one I was born into. That sound, that breathing sound, changed. There was a change in its quality that I can only describe as recognition. Like it had found what it was looking for. The engine started. I have no explanation for this. I had not turned the key again. I had both hands pressed flat against the steering wheel and I was trying not to look at the window and the engine just started. A roar of the engine catching, the dashboard lights flooding back, the radio screaming mid-sentence, the heater fan spinning back up. I jammed the car into drive and I went. I didn't look in the mirror. I drove that remaining 2 miles of Harlow Road at 63 miles per hour on a road where the suggested limit is 35, and the trees arched overhead and the headlights hammered the darkness ahead of me and I just drove. I hit the county road and I turned and I kept driving. I went through 2 stop signs I didn't slow for. I made the 7 minutes to my house in 4. I pulled into my driveway and I sat in the car with the engine running and every light on inside the vehicle for what the clock later told me was 22 minutes, though it felt like 10. Then I went inside. I locked the deadbolt. I locked the chain. I locked the handle. I turned on every light in the house. I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee I never drank and I stared at the wall, and after about an hour I convinced myself it was over. I called in sick Wednesday. I slept in fragments, 2 hours at a time, in the gray morning light with the blinds closed. Each time I woke up I lay very still for a moment, listening, and then I told myself that listening was silly and that I was safe at home and that whatever I'd seen had been a person or a trick of the dark, or a stress response from an overtired brain. My therapist has a term she uses, hypervigilance. I know the word. I repeated it to myself like a prayer. Around 2 in the afternoon I got up. I made food I didn't eat. I watched television I didn't see. At some point I fell asleep on the couch, and when I woke it was evening, and the house was filled with the particular blue-gray light of late October dusk. I decided I needed air. Not outside air, I wasn't ready for that. Just different air. I walked to the front of the house and I stood in the living room and I told myself I would open the curtains just a few inches, just to see the street, just to see the ordinary neighborhood I'd lived in for 6 years with its familiar mailboxes and its cracked sidewalks and its single working street lamp on the corner. I opened the curtains. Across the street, at the edge of the circle of light thrown by that corner street lamp, stood a figure. It was very tall. It was very still. It stood on the opposite sidewalk with its arms at its sides, and even from 60 feet away I could see that those arms descended past where they should have ended. It was facing my house, facing my window, facing me. It didn't move when I opened the curtains. It was just standing there in the edge of the streetlight in the neighborhood where I'd lived for 6 years, in the town where I grew up, and it had found me. I let the curtain fall. I stepped back from the window. I haven't opened those curtains since. That was 4 years ago. I've since moved twice. Different city the second time, 3 states away. I didn't tell anyone why. The new apartment is on the 4th floor. I leave the lights on at night. But there are mornings before the sun is fully up, when I lie in my bed in that new city 3 states away, and I hear something on the street below my window. A sound that comes up through the glass. Not a voice. Not footsteps. A sound like breathing. Slow. Too large. Coming from something that is standing very still on the sidewalk below in the dark before dawn, looking up. I don't look out the window on those mornings. I already know what I'd see. The first night I worked security at Blackwood Cemetery, I found footprints leading into a sealed mausoleum, and none leading out. By the third night, the footprints were mine. By the seventh night, something beneath the earth had learned my name. People don't take a job like that for the money, or at least they shouldn't. The pay was $14 an hour. $14 to walk 2 miles of gravel path between graves from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, 8 hours alone with nothing but a flashlight, a radio that barely got signal past the old iron fence, and a logbook I was supposed to fill out every hour to prove I was still alive. The cemetery management didn't phrase it that way, of course. The listing said, overnight grounds monitor, and promised, a peaceful environment for the right candidate. I needed peaceful. I also needed rent money. After the divorce, after the apartment in Columbus that we'd shared for 6 years emptied out to just my half of the furniture and her half of the silence, I'd taken a transfer to a regional office in Harlan's Creek, Ohio. Population 4,000, 2 gas stations, 1 diner, and Blackwood Cemetery, which had been quietly occupying the hill east of town since 1841. I rented a small house on Elm Street, and for 2 months I ate frozen dinners and stared at walls until I realized I wasn't sleeping anyway. Might as well get paid for being awake in the dark. I applied on a Tuesday. They hired me by Thursday. The previous guard, a man named Dale Pritchett, had left the job without notice the prior week. When I asked why, the cemetery director, a tight-mouthed woman named Mrs. Albrecht with reading glasses she wore on the end of her nose like a period at the end of a sentence, said only that Dale had decided the position wasn't a good fit. I found out later that Dale had driven to his sister's house in Dayton at 3 in the morning, shaking so badly she had to help him out of his car, and that he'd refused to go back, refused to explain, refused to say a single word about Blackwood that wasn't a whispered no every time someone brought it up. I didn't know any of that on my first night. The first shift was almost peaceful. Almost. I want to be honest about that. There was a beauty to Blackwood at night that I wasn't expecting. The oldest section of the cemetery dated back nearly 2 centuries, the headstones tilted in silver gray in the moonlight, some of them so worn you could barely read the names. Oak trees as old as the graves themselves stood over the pathways, their roots slowly pressing through the earth, lifting the path stones in places like something enormous and patient was working its way upward from below. I told myself that was poetic. I told myself a lot of things. The first strange thing I noticed was the footsteps. I heard them around 2 in the morning on my second loop of the grounds. A slow, deliberate crunch of gravel about 40 yards ahead of me on the main path, the sound of someone walking. I called out, identified myself as security. The sound stopped. I swept my flashlight across the rows of headstones, across the gravel, across the tree line. Nothing. No one. I wrote in my logbook, heard possible footsteps, 2:07 a.m. North Path, Section C. Investigated, no person found. Possibly animal. I was good at explaining things away in those early days. The second night, I heard the whispering. It started just after midnight while I was standing near the Victorian section. The elaborate monuments, the stone angels, the tall obelisks engraved with family names. I was drinking coffee from my thermos and looking at a particularly striking grave marker, a life-sized marble woman with her head bowed and her hands pressed together, when I became aware that something was speaking very close to my left ear. Not words at first. The texture of words, syllables moving in the wrong direction, consonants that felt wet. I turned. There was no one within 50 yards of me. The nearest living soul was 3 miles away in town, and even the highway noise had died out hours earlier. The sound surrounded me for perhaps 4 seconds and then was gone, leaving behind a ringing silence and the smell of turned earth. I told myself it was the wind through the oak trees. But there was no wind that night. The branches weren't moving. The air was completely, unpleasantly still. On the third night I found the grave. It was in Section E, the newer part of the cemetery, where the headstones were clean granite and the grass between the plots was neatly trimmed. I knew most of the plots by then. The job required you to walk every section, and I developed the habit of reading the names as I passed, some human instinct to acknowledge the dead. Which is why I noticed immediately that one plot, the one between Margaret Howe and a double stone for Raymond and Patricia Cole, looked different. The earth was disturbed. That's the only word for it. The ground above the burial plot, a woman named Carol Ann Deary, 1949 to 2019, beloved mother and friend, had been pushed upward in the center, creating a raised mound of loose soil. As if something below had been pressing against the underside of the ground. As if the 6 feet of earth between us had been pushed up from within. I crouched down and looked at it for a long time. The soil was loose and fresh-smelling. Around the edges of the mound, tiny cracks ran through the turf like the map of a river delta, the kind of fracture pattern you'd expect from enormous pressure applied from below. I almost put my hand against it. I'm grateful even now that I didn't. The cameras started failing on the fourth night. Blackwood had a modest security system, 8 cameras on poles throughout the grounds, feeding into a monitor in the small guardhouse near the front gate. Nothing sophisticated. During my breaks I'd sit in the guardhouse and watch the feeds, 8 small rectangles of green-tinted night vision footage. Trees, headstones, gravel paths. The same empty images cycling over and over. Camera 4, which covered section E in Carol and Deary's grave, went dark at 12:40 a.m. I checked the monitor. Camera 4's screen had gone entirely black, not the gray-white static of a technical failure, but a perfect, absolute black, as if something had covered the lens completely. I radioed it in as a technical issue and went to check the camera pole in person. The camera was fine. The lens was uncovered. When I looked at the guardhouse monitor over the radio feed, the operator told me camera 4 was still showing black. As I stood there, at the base of the camera pole, I became aware of the sound again, that dragging sound just beneath my feet. Not footsteps. Not an animal burrowing. A slow, wet, purposeful dragging. The sound of something repositioning itself underground, directly below where I stood. Moving, I realized, with my stomach dropping in a slow circle. As if it was aware of me above it. As if it was tracking me. I walked quickly back to the guardhouse. Behind me, the camera feed came back on. In the replay for the duration of the outage, the footage showed only static, except for 3 frames, which showed something white and indistinct pressed against the lens from the outside. From a camera mounted 8 feet off the ground. By the 5th night, I had told myself enough stories that I could almost believe them. Animals under the earth. Bad wiring. Acoustic tricks in the trees. Grief making me see things. Then I started seeing the shadows. They appeared at the edge of my flashlight beam, figures at the periphery just beyond where the light was strong enough to define them. Tall shapes between the headstones, absolutely motionless, watching. Every time I turned to face one directly, it was gone. But the moment I looked away, the moment my beam swung to the next section of path, I could feel them at my back. Not threatening exactly. Patient. The way a doctor is patient with a diagnosis. The way something waits when it already knows the outcome. I found 3 headstones that night with names I didn't recognize, names that had not been on those stones the previous night, because I had read every headstone in Section D during my second night and had not seen them. The stones themselves were clearly old, clearly worn, clearly original to the cemetery. But the names, James Elder Crow, Margaret Sophia Vale, Thomas Augustus Birch, were sharp. No, cut with something that left bright, fresh stone at the edges of each letter. I photographed them on my phone. When I checked the photos later, the headstones appeared in the image, but the names were illegible, blurred, as if my camera had refused to focus on that part of the stone. On the 6th night, I went back to Carol and Deary's grave. I don't entirely know why. Something between compulsion and courage, or perhaps neither. Perhaps simply the need to know, the thing in human nature that makes us pull back curtains and open doors and ask questions we're not sure we want answered. I stood over the disturbed earth for a long time, listening to the silence. The mound was slightly higher than the night before. The cracks in the turf around it had widened. I crouched down and put my ear near the surface. I know how that sounds. I know. What I heard was 3 deliberate knocks from beneath the earth. Not the sound of soil settling. Not gas shifting in a wooden box. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, the way you knock on a door when you know someone is home. Like an answer to an unspoken question. Like something that had been waiting for me to come close enough to hear. I stood up. My legs were shaking. I backed away 3 steps, keeping my flashlight on the mound. Then there were 4 knocks. Then 5. Each set a little louder. Each one a little more urgent, the rhythm accelerating the way a heartbeat accelerates, the way something panics or something anticipates. I ran. I'm not ashamed to say it. I ran to the guardhouse and I sat there with the door locked until 6 in the morning, and I didn't write a single thing in my logbook about what I'd heard. I should have quit. Every rational part of me understood that. Instead, I came back on the 7th night. I came back with 2 flashlights and a video camera borrowed from a neighbor and a dull certainty that I needed to see whatever there was to see. I have thought a great deal in the months since about why I went back. The best explanation I can offer is this. I had been hollowed out by grief in the years before Blackwood, emptied by loss until there wasn't enough of me left to protect properly. I was running on the fumes of a person I used to be. And something about the knocking, something about being addressed, being noticed, being sought, had reached into that hollow place and said, "Here. Look here. We know you are there." The mound in Section E had risen another 3 inches. I watched it from 10 feet away for almost 2 hours. I was recording. My hands were steady, steadier than they'd been all week, which frightened me more than the shaking had. At 2:23 a.m., by the timestamp on the recording, the earth at the center of the mound began to move. Not subtly. Not ambiguously. The soil pushed upward and then broke apart in a long crack, and I saw the edge of something pale beneath it, pressing from below. The crack widened. Soil fell away from either side in heavy curtains. The thing below was pushing upward with enormous, unhurried force, and the ground was giving way with a sound like a slow exhale. A hand appeared at the edge of the crack. Then an arm. I did not run this time. I raised my flashlight. What I saw was not Carol and Deary. What I saw was not human. The proportions were wrong in ways that I find difficult to articulate. The arm too long, the fingers too many, the skin not skin so much as the memory of skin, a pale approximation of what skin looks like stretched over a structure that had never been built for it. The face, if it was a face, was turned upward toward me. It had features arranged in a face-like configuration. Eyes where eyes should be. A mouth where a mouth should be. But there was no pretense of humanity in any of it. There was only attention. A vast, complete, unsettling attention directed at me as fully and finally as a spotlight. It did not speak. It did not need to. It looked at me the way you look at something you've been expecting for a very long time. The video shows only me standing alone in the cemetery, my flashlight pointed at an empty mound of earth. Whatever I saw that night declined to be recorded. When I came to work the next morning, because I did come back, because even after that, something in me still came back, the grave was sealed. The earth above Carol and Deary's plot was flat and undisturbed. The turf was unbroken. The mound was gone. The cracks were gone. Everything was exactly as it should be, as if nothing had ever happened, as if the earth had simply digested whatever it had briefly offered up and pulled it back below. I walked the grounds in the morning light, writing up my log. I recorded nothing about the night before. I made note of a broken lamp near the east gate, a section of gravel that had washed onto the lawn, the usual. I told myself, one more time, a final desperate bargain with normalcy, that I had dreamed it. That exhaustion and isolation had made me see things. That I would go home, sleep, eat a real meal, and this would become a story I'd tell someday in a different context, in a warmer place, with the comfort of distance. I was walking back toward the guardhouse when I saw it. In the newer section of the cemetery, 3 plots east of Carol and Deary, an area that had been empty ground when I arrived, no headstone, no burial, there was a stone. Clean gray granite, its edges sharp and new, its surface polished to a brightness that caught the morning sun. It had not been there the night before. It had not been there at any point during my 7 nights at Blackwood Cemetery. I know this because I had walked past that empty plot every single shift and had thought, for reasons I hadn't fully examined, how strange it was that the space had been left unused when the rest of that row was filled. The headstone bore my name. My full name. My middle name, which I've never shared publicly. My date of birth, correct to the day. And below that, below the dash that on every other stone in Blackwood Cemetery ended with a year, a month, a date, there was nothing. The second date had been left blank. Not because it was unknown. I understand that now. Because it hadn't happened yet. I handed in my resignation that afternoon. I told Mrs. Albrecht the job wasn't a good fit. She looked at me over her reading glasses and said nothing. Just nodded once as if she'd expected exactly this and had simply been waiting for it to arrive, the way you wait for something you've been expecting for a very long time. I moved back to Columbus. I sleep with the lights on. I don't visit cemeteries. But sometimes, in the moment just before I fall asleep, I hear 3 knocks. Deliberate, evenly spaced, getting a little closer every night. I realized I wasn't alone in the cemetery the moment the footsteps behind me matched mine, perfectly step for step, and when I stopped they didn't. It was a Thursday in late October when the last bus out of Milford shut down for the season. I'd known for weeks it was coming. The county posted the notice back in August, a yellow flyer pinned to the door of the diner where I worked double shifts. But between the rent and the transmission on my truck and the sheer exhaustion that had settled into my bones like wet concrete, I'd let the weeks slide by without making other arrangements. So when my manager finally flipped the closed sign at 11:30 and told me I could go, I stepped into the cold dark knowing exactly what that meant. I was walking home. It was about 4 miles from the diner to my apartment on the far side of town. The main road would have taken me 40 minutes, but there was a shortcut. Everyone in Harlow Creek knew about it. You cut through the old Milford Road Cemetery, the one up against the forest, the one that stopped accepting new residents sometime around 1962, and you came out the other side in half the time. I'd done it 100 times in daylight. Kids cut through there on Halloween, couples walked the paths in summer. It was just a cemetery. Old, overgrown, a little melancholy but harmless. That night I told myself the same thing. It's just a cemetery. You've done it 100 times. I turned up my collar against the wind and took the shortcut. The iron gate was unlocked, which was normal. It was always unlocked. The rusted latch had given up decades ago. I pushed through and let it swing shut behind me with its familiar moan of old metal, and I started down the gravel path between the graves. My phone flashlight cut a pale wedge through the dark. The headstones threw long shadows behind them. The forest pressed in on three sides, and the wind moved through the trees in low, rolling sighs. I was maybe 50 yards in when I noticed the first statue. It was an angel. I knew that statue. White marble, maybe 6 feet tall, one hand raised toward heaven in a gesture of benediction. I'd walked past it dozens of times. But that night, as my light swept across it, the hand wasn't raised. It was lowered. Both arms hung at its sides, and its face, and I know how this sounds, I know, its face was turned slightly toward the path. Toward me. I stopped. I held my light on it for a long moment. The marble was cold and still. I told myself the angle was different at night. I told myself I was tired. I kept walking. 20 yards further on, something moved between the graves to my left. Not a deer. I've seen deer in that cemetery before, and I know the way they move, that quick fluid startlement, the flash of a white tail. This was different. This was low and deliberate, moving parallel to me, keeping pace between the stones. I swept my light across the row of graves, and the beam passed through empty space. Nothing. Just old marble and dead grass in the dark. I walked faster. The gravel crunched under my boots and the wind pushed at my back, and I focused on the far end of the path where the gate would be, where the streetlight at the corner of Milford and Cypress would be glowing its dull amber, where the world was ordinary and made of concrete and electric light. That's when I heard the footsteps. They were behind me on the gravel, matching my pace exactly. I slowed, they slowed. I sped up, they sped up. When I stopped, completely still, heart pressed flat against my ribs, the footsteps took one more step and then stopped too. One single step that did not belong to me. I did not turn around. I'm not sure why. Some cold animal part of my brain had decided, with complete and quiet certainty, that I did not want to see what was behind me. I walked faster instead, almost jogging now, and the footsteps came with me, steady and unhurried, as though whatever made them was not in any kind of a hurry at all. Then I heard the breathing. It came from somewhere off the path, to my right, deep between the older stones where the cemetery met the tree line. A slow, rhythmic sound, too measured to be natural. Not the breathing of something at rest, but the breathing of something that was choosing to breathe, the way you might choose to hum, the way you might make a sound because you want to be heard. Low and even and very, very close. Then a whisper. My name. My full name, not the shortened version that everyone at the diner used, not the name on my name tag, but my full legal name, the one on my birth certificate, the one my mother used when she was angry. Whispered from somewhere in the dark to my right. Patient and precise. Marcus Allen Pruitt. I ran. And then I saw the figure. It was standing between two large oaks at the edge of the cemetery, right where the tree line began. Standing still. Impossibly tall, 7 feet maybe more, with a thin, elongated silhouette that seemed wrong in a way I couldn't immediately name. It wasn't moving. It was just there, standing, in the way that things stand when they have been standing for a very long time and have learned patience the way stones learn patience. My flashlight barely reached it. In the beam, it was little more than a tall dark shape, its face, if it had a face, lost entirely in shadow. I turned away from it and ran for the gate. The gate was closed. Not just swung shut, closed. The latch that hadn't worked in 30 years was fully engaged, the old iron bolt seated firmly in its cradle. I grabbed the bars and shook them and the gate didn't move. I pulled and rattled and wrenched at the latch with both hands and it held like it had been welded shut. I looked back down the path. The tall figure was no longer standing at the tree line. I looked left and right, scanning with my flashlight, and the cemetery was empty. No movement between the graves. No shadow in the trees. No breathing. The footsteps had stopped. The whisper had stopped. Everything had stopped, and the sudden silence was, somehow, worse than all of it. I pressed my back against the gate and tried to think. I was on the back half of the cemetery, the older section with the stones from the 1800s, the ones with the long epitaphs worn smooth by time. The main section was back the way I'd come. The forest was on 3 sides. And somewhere in the dark between us, whatever had whispered my name was waiting. I tried my phone. No signal, which made no sense. I had 4 bars at the diner, but the signal indicator showed nothing, not even 1 bar. I tried calling 911 anyway and got a mechanical silence that wasn't even a dial tone. I tried to pull up the flashlight brighter and the screen flickered twice and went dark. The battery had been at 70% when I entered the cemetery. I was alone. I was locked in. And the darkness around me was absolute. I stood there for what felt like several minutes with my back against the cold iron gate, listening. Nothing moved. The wind had died. Even the trees had gone still. The silence had a texture to it, something almost physical, like pressure in the ears before a storm. And then, from somewhere deep in the cemetery, from somewhere among the old stones, I heard a single soft footstep on the gravel. Then another. Slow. Measured. Moving toward me. The moon came out from behind the clouds, just briefly, just enough, and I saw it. It was walking down the gravel path toward me. Walking is the wrong word. Moving. Progressing. The legs bent at the wrong points, the joints hinging in the wrong direction, the gait a kind of slow, patient folding and unfolding that turned my stomach the way a familiar word turns strange when you repeat it too many times. It was tall, far taller than it had seemed at the tree line, and getting taller somehow, stretching as it approached, as though the closer it got, the more of it there was to see. I looked at the ground at its feet. There was no shadow. The moonlight fell all around it, through shadows from every headstone, from the fence posts, from the bare branches overhead. But beneath the figure, the ground was smooth and shadowless, as if the light passed through it, or as if the darkness inside it was already so complete there was nothing more to cast. Its arms were too long. They hung nearly to its knees, which themselves bent backward, and as it walked they swayed with a slow nautical rhythm that had nothing to do with the motion of the body, as though the arms were following some separate instruction, some other intention entirely. The head sat at the top of a neck that was too thin to support it, tilted very slightly to one side, and the face was dark. Not shadowed, dark. As if the face itself was an absence, a hole in the shape of a head, looking at me out of nothing. It was 30 yards away. Then 20. It did not hurry. It had the unhurried quality of something that knows there is no need to hurry. The footsteps were soft and precise on the gravel, almost delicate, and as it came closer I could hear, or feel because I am not sure it was a sound exactly, a low vibration, a subsonic pressure that I experienced less in my ears than in my chest, in my fillings, behind my eyes. 15 yards. I threw myself at the gate. I didn't think about the latch. I just grabbed the top bar and hauled myself up with a strength I didn't know I had, the iron cold and rough under my palms, and I went over the top and landed hard on the other side, the gravel of the road outside biting into my hands and knees. I got up and I ran. I ran without looking back. I ran the full 2 miles home without stopping once, my lungs burning, my hands bleeding, the streetlights blurring past me, and I did not look back. I got home at midnight. I locked the door. I locked the windows. I turned on every light in the apartment. I sat on the edge of my bed and I shook for a while, and then I stopped shaking, and then I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Fatigue. Hysteria. A strange night. A mind that wanted patterns in the dark and found them. I lay down in my clothes on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling and waited for my heart to slow down. It did slow down. Eventually. And I must have slept because I woke suddenly at 3:17 in the morning. I saw the clock, and the room was dark. Somehow in my sleep I had turned off the lamp on the nightstand. I didn't remember doing it, but there was a lot about that night I wasn't trusting my memory of. I lay still for a moment in the dark, getting my bearings. My apartment. My room. My ceiling above me. The familiar geometry of ordinary life. Then I looked toward the doorway. My bedroom door was open. I always sleep with it open, and through it I could see the hallway faintly illuminated by the street light coming through the bathroom window at the far end. The hall was its usual narrow self. The coat hooks. The framed photo of my sister. The smoke detector with its small red pulse of light. And standing in the doorway perfectly still was a tall dark shape. It stood with its arms at its sides, its head tilted very slightly to the right. It was too tall for the doorframe. It should have had to stoop, but it didn't stoop. It simply occupied the space in a way that made the doorframe seem like a suggestion it had chosen to ignore. There was no face visible in the dark. There was no sound of breathing. And the small rectangle of light from the hallway window, which should have thrown at least a faint shadow of it across my floor, threw nothing. The floor where it stood was smooth and shadowless. I did not move. I did not speak. I lay in my bed and I looked at it, and it stood in my doorway and looked at me, or did whatever it does in place of looking, and neither of us did anything at all. I don't know how long it stood there. I kept meaning to reach for the lamp, and then I would forget that I had meant to, and then I would remember again, and by the time I reached out and found the switch and flooded the room with light, the doorway was empty. I checked every room, every closet, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. All the locks were still locked. All the windows were still closed. There was no way in and no way out and nothing there. But in the morning, when the light came through the curtains and I finally made myself look at the doorway in full daylight, I found something I don't have an explanation for. The paint on the door frame, old off-white paint that I've been meaning to refresh since I moved in, was marked at a height of about 7 feet on both sides. Not scratched. Not scraped. Just darkened, slightly, as if something had rested against the wood there. As if something had stood in that frame long enough to leave a trace of itself behind. I haven't taken the shortcut since. I don't walk home at night anymore. I bought a car, a cheap one barely running but it locks from the inside. I tell myself that matters. I sit with every light on until morning because the dark in this apartment has changed. It has a different quality to it now. Oh wait. And sometimes at 3 in the morning I wake up suddenly for no reason I can name and I lie very still, and I do not look toward the doorway. I have learned very recently that some things it is better not to see.